What's up, y'all? I actually don't know the date for sure, which is fine, but if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I can tell you the day. The day of the week today is Wednesday. I think it's the 18th of March. I know it's 2025. This is In the Image Clothing Company podcast. My name is Evan Strong, the founder of In the Image Clothing Company. Here at our podcast, we have discussions on the gospel of Jesus Christ, aka the truth of all things. It's 1/3 of our company as a whole. I'll do a little intro rundown of what our company is. We'll talk about clothing for a minute. However long the intro is, if you've heard past episodes of In the Image Clothing Company podcast, sometimes they're quite lengthy, the intros, and sometimes they're just a couple minutes, but yeah. We'll get into this. This is episode 82 of In the Image Clothing Company podcast. I play guitar. One of our other thirds to our company is In the Image Clothing Company music. Each time I hit a T or a K or a C or something, we can make into a beat. But the reason I mention that right now, that we have a music side to us, is because I have a guitar when I do. And in my life, I've had 20. Currently, I have 0 of my own. So within the intros, a lot of times I'll do something with a guitar, right? Rather than beatbox. But what and if and when things happen, they do. That humbles me. I started to slow down as I was saying that. I just know how big guitar is going to be in my life for my whole life. And there's an episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast titled The Greatest Battle. And I went over how it's been such a battle for me playing guitar. Not the actual playing, but what all comes with me and guitars. Playing is natural for Evan Strong, me, the founder of In the Image Clothing Company. Just saying it because it's the case, just for context. But it humbles me when I start talking about guitars, because it's going to be a huge part of my life. It already has been for a couple of years. So I address setups of guitars, okay? All other things that we do talk about with music on that side, we do. One other third of our company is In the Image Clothing Company, the main side, where we address the human body's natural function. We always use the keyword allow. When it comes to the human body, we allow it to work because it's only ever going to do what it was designed to. And it's very commonly getting altered in 2025. People are wearing clothing that's made out of materials that never existed, even decades back and ever before then. And I'll continue this, but I feel like I need to touch on guitars a little bit more. I'm just being prompted to keep talking about that. I'm going to play guitars for the rest of my life, all right? If you saw me on In the Image Clothing Company Music, I posted the video where I broke Frank the guitar. I had words flying out of my mouth that we've been commanded not to say. I was kind of getting after the piece of wood when it didn't really do much of anything. But it's just this whole battle. But I just, I've made it very clear, and it's just the case, I'm not going to ever give up on guitars. And that's such a humbling thing. Because I said, actually, about a month ago, 2 months ago maybe, guitar is probably going to be, I don't want to say exactly some kind of percentage of what, because I don't know, but it's going to be a huge part of my life. It's not just that I'm going to be playing guitars here and there, chilling at home when there's not much else to do throughout my life, but it's going to be a really, really big part of my life, for a really, really big part of my life. So yeah, I just feel like that's something I needed to really kind of touch on. I've said it, but right now it needed to be said. I was just not feeling right about moving through the intro until I addressed that a little bit more. So yeah, nylon string guitars, radius in the fretboard, somewhere around a half size to allow the body to work. There we go. Now, In the Image Clothing Company, the main side, we address the body and allow it to work. And the reason we have clothing in our name is because clothing is the only thing placed onto our physical bodies directly. It alters the body if it's imbalanced at all, weight-wise, size-wise, left to right, front to back. And the body has a center. There's a spine, the nose, the sternum, the things that are in the center, the trachea. Our jaw has to stabilize the whole body. Things just need to be balanced because we live on Earth, the planet that we have, and it has gravity that just affects the body the way that it affects the body, and it always does, always will the same way. And our bodies will always only work the same way. So if they're being altered at all, we're having pain. That's just the body telling us there's something wrong with it. Persistent, chronic, constant pain people don't know how to get to the bottom of. We get the actual truth to you here at In The Image Clothing Company. I always say don't believe me because there's a lot of people claiming they know what's going on. A lot of people claiming they have fixes for X, Y, and any other letter that they could choose. But truth is truth. It manifests itself to you. So we talk about a lot, though, more than just keeping clothing centered and having it fit correct, which is what we do. We talk about eating naturally, standing, sitting, walking, sleeping, hydration, all these things, and how to just do it the only way the body's going to. And the big thing is, we don't move through life. We move through our clothing first and foremost, and then like physically, right? And then what else is outside of us and our clothing, then we can address. But really, we don't go anywhere our clothing doesn't if we're wearing it. And vice versa, right? So that's what we are on the three sides of us in a nutshell. Now, clothing for everybody needs to be in a certain location. It'll never change. It never has been anything different, even thousands of years before I was a thing. I don't really know how that worked exactly, as far as I'm not going to try to explain it all right now, whether I do or don't or whatever, right? But, because I don't, but, right? Just meaning the body is always going to ever only work how it does. And you don't have to be into fashion. You don't have to even care about clothing apart from just you wear it. And it's either altering your body or we're being very intentional to have it be non-restricting to our bodies. Those are the only two things you can do. It's on you, always, if you're wearing it, right? In the moments it is. So pants need to be entirely above our hips with the waistband, unrestricting to the hip function. Slightly higher in the front than the rear when it comes to the angle of the waistband to keep the pelvis in its neutral position and the rest of the body, the core activated just naturally as the body's designed to just be, designed to work. That's an episode of In The Image Clothing Company podcast. So, tops that we wear, the seams on top of our shoulders need to be evenly behind these little bones that are on the peak of the shoulder, near the edges. Those bones up there are the other end of the bone that comes down to the center of our chest, which is called the collarbone. And so having those seams sit in that location allows the shoulders to be in their only neutral location. Now, with the edge seams of our shoulders, they need to be there at the edges of our shoulders. Otherwise, it's a clash of a function of a mechanical machine being the human body and the shoulder capsule as a whole and whatever's placed onto it, right? So button-ups, a lot of times, and other designs of certain things have a band of material across the top/back rather than just a single seam on top. And so they're naturally geared to just keep those shoulders where they would always only ever work, behind our head, where they connect, in the very rear of the base of the skull with those upper trapezius muscles. Now, dude, let's get into this. 2 prerequisites for In The Image Clothing Company that we say need to be done, and they're apart from just where clothing sits because sometimes you don't have shoelaces, sometimes you don't have tags, and those are the 2 things we address in our prerequisites, one for each of the 2, right? Our shoelacing technique, In The Image Clothing Company's shoelacing technique, quote unquote, right? We don't own some kind of technique of a weave of a rope, but the human foot only is shaped how it is, and that's how we allow the weave of our lace to mesh with the operation of the human feet. With that, we tie our shoes evenly over toward the inside on both feet to the center line of the body that we established is there because we don't have a say over it. It has to be, otherwise the body is being altered, and that can't happen without compensation and pain If anything within the body isn't working correct, there's something else and many other things trying to do some sort of compensation to just allow it to continue to do the things that it does. And it can't, because they all only do what they do. So if something else is compensating, it's not only that one thing that's being compensated for that's inhibited, but it's also those things that are now compensating. Those compensations are inhibiting those things function as well. So the body then just gets very out of whack. Times and places, we can address only what we can within our own situations, but we have to. It's the only thing we're actually given in this life is our physical bodies. So secondly, we remove all tags. The other prerequisite for In the Image Clothing Company. If there's a tag placed within clothing, even in the shoes anywhere, it's either altering the position of the skeletal system's only connections and or not allowing the musculature that's next to it to activate. And then again, compensation within other parts of the body because a muscle gets turned off. Scar tissue gets built, right? Chronic patternings across the globe from beginning to end. Anybody, man, woman, tall, short, skinny, fat, any age, any part of the earth, the things that I say that where clothing needs to sit applies to all those human beings, meaning every single one that ever is, because we're all designed in the image of our living God, Jesus Christ. And so here at the podcast, that's like I said, right? Our discussions are on the truth of all things. And so episode 81, this one here is titled Alone, Not Lonely. And I'm going to go slow with that because a lot of people going so quick, they feel like they got to be around people all the time. So let's get into this because my name's Evan Strong. I'm the founder of In the Image Clothing Company. But you already heard that at the beginning. But me being who I am, I've spent so much of my life alone. Unwillingly. For a lot of it. Let me be very clear. A lot of it very much so willingly on my part. But a lot of it was unwilling. Nothing I could have done about it. But we're not alone when we're alone. The Spirit of our living God, and I say that kind of hard-hitting right there, because the Spirit of Jesus Christ, 1/3 of the Trinity. Hey, guess what? In the Image Clothing Company has 3 sides to it. That's a trinity. The pyramid is a very strong shape. The Egyptians know a thing or two about that. Trinities. Triangles. All right? The Spirit of our God. It's ever present. It dwells within all things except for unholy temples. But I'm a sinful by nature human being, so how does that work? Times and places. It's about our heart posture. Okay? If you've ever heard the term heart posture, it's not about your heart doing like, some kind of exercise to stand up straighter. But it's about how's your heart sitting? Where does your heart dwell? Right? Your intentions that are coming out of your being. Being is the word I said there. When your heart posture is intending on being loving, even when you're really mad about something and it's hard to sometimes, hey, sinful by nature, overcoming the natural man, right? Human beings are naturally sinful, but we're supposed to overcome the natural man and become like Jesus Christ. He's perfect. And having a heart posture, meaning having our heart geared toward Christ, having our heart as if it were like a bow and arrow, pointed, ready to shoot, directly aiming at Jesus Christ just as our target of what to do and who to be like, right? Straight and narrow path. That's how we get to eternal life, right? Broad is the gate that leads you to damnation, destruction, and a bunch of stuff you don't want, but a lot of us have experienced, right? Now, when we're alone, we're not. And I've talked about this, I've touched on it when and if and how I have throughout In the Image Clothing Company Podcast episodes. I'm pretty sure this is episode 81. I'm almost certain it's not 61. But if it's 82, then hey, could be. I'm just kind of sitting on that for a second. But I'm going to stick with 81 for right now as far as what I'm calling this within it. If it's 82, it's 82. Well, I guess I'll find out once I stop this and see how many I made. It might be episode 82, actually. Shoot. All right, maybe this is, I think we're going to call it episode 82. I think it is, dude. But, you know, we're not alone, dude. And so, I went to a dog shelter today, and a couple times last week as well, or within the past week, right? And talk about being humbled. I just don't want to be wrong about it. I'm fine with being wrong. I'll be wrong if I'm wrong, but I don't want to say it wrong for the sake of misleading if it's 82 or 81. I'm kind of caught up on that. If I'm just being transparent about it, I'm a little bit like, shoot, kind of feeling like I should know. It's quote unquote my podcast, meaning I'm the one that speaks in these. Like, I don't know if it's 81 or 82. Darn, that hits me. That's weird that like, I'm kind of caught up on that, bro. All right. Anyway, I went to a dog shelter near where I live a few times recently, and just to play with the dogs. I'm going to get a dog. I've referenced that little tidbit of information, if you will, in past episodes of In the Image Clothing Company podcast, but I went to a dog shelter, and they actually have the kind of dog I'm going to get. I'm going to get a standard poodle, and there's this beautiful boy over there, man, this dog, and I sat with him in the grass for 4 hours today outside the front of the shelter. They just allow you to play with the dogs, take them out. They have a little area in the back with a few little dog runs you can hang out with them in so that they can play with people and have socialization and be around people, you know, even while they're in the shelter before somebody adopts them. And so while I was sitting there with that dog, I was realizing how, you know, I mean, I talk about it, but, it hits you sometimes in a little bit different kind of personal way. We can feel the Spirit of our God in anything and everything that He works through. This might be a roller coaster of an episode, brother. I talk about, right, the episodes of In the Image Clothing Company podcast titled, It's Not About Me, and the other one titled, It's Not About Them. All the times I say it's not about this and that and those things, but it's about Jesus Christ. When I'm hanging out with this dog, I wasn't lonely before when I was just driving in the car with nobody else. But then I also wasn't lonely with that dog there. And I also wasn't lonely tonight at Institute when there's many humans in the same building as me. But in any and all those situations, I'm no more or less alone, no matter what I could perceive. And our God is ever present. There's that episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast titled One Eternal Round, But also we live with an eternal God. His course is one eternal round. His Spirit is ever present. We can't be alone. I don't care what you want to believe. Does that sound mean to say? Because I mean out of encouragement. A lot of people believe they're alone. A lot of people believe they got to figure it out with no kind of help or intervention. And you ever heard that term? If not, it's a term. I've heard it from other human beings. Divine intervention. When our God intervenes in our lives, I talk about how He orchestrates everything, right? He's not only just a God who created stuff and left it there and now it's just what it is, but He's orchestrating things. He's ever present. He never leaves. We can choose to, right? Like how I talk about agency. We can choose to sin, but the only other side is us surrendering to our God's will. So you can get all caught up on thinking you can choose whatever you want to do, and you can. But all you can really choose is to damage yourself. And I do it. Oh boy, right? But ideally not. But our God is not distant from us. Sometimes we get distant from Him. It's on our end. It's the one-sided thing, like agency, right? Don't agree with me, but that's how it is. Yeah, meaning I'm not asking for agreement. You can agree with truth, but don't agree with Evan Strong for the sake of agreeing with another human being. That's not gonna do you good when I'm wrong about something occasionally, or maybe every word that comes out of my mouth is wrong. Don't believe me. Take the truth within it if it's there. It is, because I feel it. You don't gotta believe it though, right? I mean, I mean it. I also say leave me alone, and I mean that as well. If you ever see me just out, doing whatever, and I'm just all, me. Leave that kid there. This one, the one speaking. Leave him alone. Talking in third person or something. Talking like I'm a different person talking about this one. We're not alone though. I've spent so much time in my life driving. I used to do so much driving just in the mountains or just in the towns alone in a vehicle. And in those moments I wasn't alone. Really. Actually. But it doesn't matter. If you're physically alone, because yeah, sometimes we are. Right now in this room, I'm physically alone. But the spirit of my God is still ever present. But I don't have to be lonely. I don't have to feel it. Because that's a choice. It's a perception. To be lonely. You can be entirely alone. You talk about the movie Castaway. I'd credit whoever made it and stuff if I knew, but there's a movie titled Castaway. A lot of people know that movie because it was very popular for many years. Probably still quite popular as far as movies that people have seen at this time period, right? The date that I'm not quite sure of on the episode that I'm not exactly sure what the number is of In the Image Clothing Company podcast, right? But somewhere around the ones I said, give or take, bro. Ideally take what you're given, right? That's crazy. All right, so here's the thing though, really. I mean, we're still talking about real stuff, but I feel like I'm flustered. And that's a good thing. It's really good to be out of your element, right? A big part of it is the intro. No joke. That kind of throws me off, dude. Not playing guitar. Coming into this, I'm like, man, I'm a guitarist. As far as one of the things that I have been placed here to do is being somebody who plays guitar. So, kind of throws me off for real for the rest of the episode. No joke. I'm not kidding, dude. Not kidding. All right, well, a lot of people feel alone, dude. And the word to focus on there, as far as understanding what that means, is feel. Because you're not alone. And also, you don't have to be lonely. Because I like to be alone. And, oh gosh, that's crazy. Yeah, no, that's that's just all I'm going to say about that as far as one side of it. I like to be alone. I do. I live with my mom currently. And, at this time, she's the only one in the house with me, other than me. I like to be alone. I like to have just my own area and not be around anybody else. Tonight at Institute, we had some refreshments, some food. It was nachos, if I'm getting specific on what it was. If I'm getting real specific, I could tell you what was in the one that I ate, but I won't, just for the sake of you don't need to know. Not that it's a secret, but what is a secret is the hidden mysteries that we get allowed to know of the kingdom of our God. But it happens when we're in our prayer closets, right? Alone. Christ went and knelt in the areas that he did by himself. He went up on the mountains and prayed alone. And he talked to the Father in solitude. And he wasn't lonely. He was talking to his Father. When I ate my nachos, there's plenty of tables with quite a few people, but plenty of open seats. And I chose one of the only tables that didn't have anybody at it. And I sat down. And I'm not somebody who can't have, social interactions pretty well naturally, but who's to say, right? If I'm saying it, I'm saying whatever, don't believe me. But what I mean is I chose the table that was pretty much only me, and it was only me as far as human beings go. But I wasn't lonely about it. It wasn't because I don't know how to be around people or don't feel like I can or deserve it or I'm comfortable to on my end. But also doing that, there was no sense of being lonely. That's what I wanted to do, is be able to just sit there and eat super slow as I do, right? Chew extremely thorough. And people are like, holy cow, this guy is different. Yeah. Yeah, that's the case. And so I was doing that, and hanging out. And I was realizing a lot of people don't really have the ability in their current moment to do that and feel so comfortable about it. They kind of feel wrong and out of place. But in most cases, I feel better alone. Take it with a grain of salt. I mean, I want to have a family if that's supposed to happen. And, I like to be around people when I do, but I really love to be alone. Holy cow, dude. There's an episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast titled Leave Me Alone. But I think the big thing with this whole table scenario is I feel more included when I can sit at my own table in a room full of other tables that have other people on them, and I can just watch things. Because then I'm involved in kind of just everything that's within the room. And I'm kind of just like here and there and there and there with my awareness. I'm not alone at all. Physically at the table that I'm at, sure. But I don't feel lonely. And this hits me so hard, dude. This episode, I told you, it might be a roller coaster. This might be one where you gotta just get your seat fastened nicely on you so that you don't just like go off the rails. I don't know, but I mean it because this is so real for me. This is one of those topics in my life that really can describe in a lot of ways what my life is. Just the phrase of what this title of the episode is. Episode 82, we're saying for now, who knows, of In the Image Clothing Company podcast titled Alone, Not Lonely. Yeah, definitely times in my life where I felt very lonely. But then definitely many, many, many times, the majority of all the time, I mean, pretty much always, I can be entirely alone and not feel lonely. Oh gosh, it's such a crazy thing for people to grasp because some people can't. And it's not their fault because some people are here with kind of a different journey, right? We all play our roles, as I mentioned when I do within past episodes of In the Image Clothing Company podcast. I held off on the beatbox for that one, but some people, they're not really content alone because they're kind of not really supposed to be. If there's something they can do about it, right? But there's other people that are really actually meant to be alone for the majority of their life. And you can be alone without being lonely, man. No matter who you are, even if you are somebody who's pretty well like set up for being around people, you can still do it, man. And it's a good thing to be able to understand that it's okay to be, right? Because sometimes it happens. Well, I've been thinking about this. I talked about standard poodles. You'll see Evan Strong with one if you ever see me with one. That's as obvious as it gets, right? As are a lot of the things that we talk about here. Meaning that's the dog I'm going to get when I do. And a lot of times people feel like they need an animal. I'm not talking down on anybody, but again, we're different. I'm just giving some context on differences and that it's okay to be alone and you don't have to feel lonely. And I'm going to sit on that for a second. Because a lot of people will get a dog out of just, they need something there always, or someone. And that's not my case. And sometimes it's on the dog's end as well. You leave a dog home alone and you hear that phrase, separation anxiety. The dog kind of doesn't know how to handle himself or herself when you go off to do whatever you do away from the house and it's in a kennel or just maybe in the house alone or in the yard or wherever it's at. No human beings around it, and especially not you. The dog loves you as much as you love it, And so I've been thinking about that a lot with dogs too, leading up to me getting a dog of my own. You can train a dog to be pretty darn content alone. Some people are pretty darn content alone. And as I'm saying, it's different from person to person. We are different in the ways that we are. We're all the same as far as we're sons and daughters of our living God, Jesus Christ. The black person, the white person, the Hispanic, the Asian. Who else? Right? It's like so many ethnicities out there, and we just talk about a few of them when we start talking about them. I mention it like that because we are individuals in the ways that we are, and sometimes there's quite uniqueness to us, and we've kind of sometimes focus on like only a few separations between human beings, and don't realize that there's a lot of individuality. Like we sometimes maybe only know a few dog breeds, but there's a lot, right? So what I mean is, it's good for everybody, dogs and people alike, to be able to be okay being alone and not feel like you have to kind of scramble to find someone or something, probably, a living thing, like maybe an animal, like service animals, right? And times and places, and that's what they're for. But you don't want to be so dependent on having somebody there, because there's moments when, you go down to the grocery store and the dog's in the house because it maybe isn't allowed in that specific place you're going. Nothing against the dog, but hey, dude, you're going to be fine. Even if you may, think that you'll feel lonely, you don't have to, right? We don't have to be lonely. We really don't. I mean, because I've thought about before, what if you were to end up in some situation? I mentioned that movie Castaway, and what happened with that movie is somebody ended up on an island alone. And what if we were, right? What if we were all on our own little islands on this earth, but every one of us was here, but we didn't have any contact with the other people? We're on the same earth, but we're physically alone. Well, what if you were, right? What if something did happen? What if you got stranded somewhere, in whatever way that could look in your part of the earth, in your time period? What would you do? Because if you could only do to the extent of what you could do to get yourself to either be around somebody or some animal, well then what? Because there you are. And I really want this to be heard correct and encouraging, because I get it. Sometimes people get pretty scared about being alone. All right, that makes sense, right? We're human beings. We're here to love each other and to help each other and to serve each other as our God would. The golden rule: treat each other how we want to be treated, right? Love one another as Jesus loves you. Try to show kindness in all that you do. That's a song within the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints music. Yeah. But what if you couldn't, I mean, what if there was a time period, if it was an hour, if it was 3 days, if it was a month, or it was 3 years? I mean, we can get to distances of time, lengths of time, and durations of things that maybe you would never want to happen, but what if it did? I'm going to take that pretty slow because, well, you'd have to in that moment. If it did, I mean, if it came to you actually being alone, as far as no other people around, you'd probably have to slow down quite a bit. Because there's not hustle and bustle to keep up with. You'd be the only one hustling, and there'd be nothing to hustle too. So you'd slow down a lot. And that's what it's done for me. Spending so much of my life alone. I do things a lot slower than other people. When I talk about how, not that it has to be something, but it's just the case. You go listen to past episodes of the Image Clothing Company podcast. I've been the sole person saying any words on any of the 81 or 2 episodes up until now. I think we're on 82. I'm almost certain of it. But certainly I don't know all things, so I might be wrong. But I have a pretty deep understanding of life and pretty, deep just in my being as far as, yeah, that's how I'm going to word that, because I am. But it's had to come from somewhere, and it's been a lot of time spent alone. And it's given me perspective and understanding of what it really means to be alone. Because a lot of people like myself really cherish time alone. And I'm fortunate to not have to be, I don't care how this sounds, but around people. I like to be maybe around people when I want, but maybe from a distance, and maybe don't talk to me. Right? But some people are in situations or places of the world, or something's got to be done a certain way to where it's kind of hard for them to have time when they can actually be completely alone. And I think it's a thing that people need to be able to do without me just trying to say that I think something. I mean, because it's something that sometimes does have to happen. Sometimes you got to go to the doctor's office. You sprained an ankle and they don't allow pets. So that dog's got to learn to stay home alone for maybe 3 hours. You'll be back with the cast, sitting there on the couch with him now. And now you're just hanging out with him even closer than before because you're not moving as much. Well, your leg's healing, or whatever. Just hypothetical. I'm just saying, because what happens is, that it gives us a deeper understanding to where then we can be more with people when we're with people if we're content being alone. That's really how it works. And that's what's really cool about it. I didn't plan on even saying that because I didn't really realize that until I just said it. I mean, I realized it, but I don't know if I've ever really picked it apart quite like that because I'm so good at being with people in the ways that people need me to be there with them, because I know how important it is to be able to be content to be alone. And so when I'm around people, it's almost as if I'm not there. And that makes them feel like I'm closer than other people that try to strike up a conversation. Because I know how beautiful it really is to be able to be content being alone. Man, these poor dogs, though, at a shelter, man, they're in a little kennel. They got like a 4x8 area of floor. That's it. A water bowl. Food bowl. There's the dog until somebody comes and opens the door and lets it out. But what about the people who are captives, I talk about stuff like this often within the podcast because, no, not that it's ever an ideal thing to be a human being. You can get all specific with whatever, but that's why I said it that way, is because it's not an ideal thing to be a human being. Because ideally, we don't have challenges in our ideals, right? But we're here to experience challenges. And so people get in situations where they have to be alone. And that's how I was at many parts of my life. And what it did, like I said, is gave me this understanding of it's okay. Because you don't have to feel lonely. Because what you're doing when you're feeling lonely is you're seeking something that you think you need. And our God gives us all that we need. We lack no good things. We're the perfect shepherd, Jesus the Christ. He watches after his flock, his fold, his sheep, and he gives us all the things that we need, all the times that we do, and he's not somebody who can change, not somebody who can miss something, oh, I didn't realize you needed that. That's not going to happen with our perfect God. He's got the hairs of our head numbered. It's not my words, it's his. Don't believe me, right? I mean, I can say whatever I want. Ideally, I like to say less, Seriously, I don't talk so much with people. But when I'm alone, sometimes I get some really deep insights. See what I mean? Because you don't have to feel lonely when you're alone. You really don't. I need to hear this as well, though, because, I like to be alone, but I'm still a human being, and we're still here to be here with each other. And sometimes, it's like, man, I haven't seen many people for a while or whatever, But no matter what, I mean, we don't have to feel lonely. Our God, well, the name Emmanuel is one of the names of our God, Jesus Christ. And it means God with us, because he is. Always. the best relationships that there are on the earth between human beings are between human beings who are entirely content alone. Because then when they come together, it's not like they're trying to get something from the other person, right? They're there because they can just be them and the other person can just be them. Except each talking about their own selves. I feel so weird in this episode. I don't know. It feels so right. I mean, I think that's what it is. It's like I almost don't know how to even like say this because it almost doesn't need to be said. It's just that's such a strange thing to say. What? Talk about a back and forth. A lot of times people are in a crowded room and they feel like they're alone. You relate to that or what? I think just about everybody can, or at least has a moment or two that they can look back and see like, oh, wow, yeah, it kind of seemed like that at that point. What the? Got like 150, 200 people around me, but I feel like I'm entirely alone right now. Good. Yeah. Because then you're not seeking people. Our God's voice is a still small one. It's something that needs some quiet and some like space, if you will, to be able to hear properly. And we're not alone, dude. I don't even know. I feel like this could be very many. Dude, this is real. I told you this might be a roller coaster in just a great way because I feel this so deeply, man. I mean, I can see it, and that's crazy, dude. I don't desire to be around people, and I don't desire to. Is that crazy or what? What are we saying right now? Because that's so real. I mean, I couldn't be more real. My body language, it's like I'm so chilled out, dude, because I don't even know how to fully perceive what's even going on in me right now because it's just that real. I see people who feel so lonely and they just seek people. And then when they get around them, they feel worse. The way you're going to feel content is that whole phrase, right? Once you realize that Christ is all you have, you'll realize he's all you need. Because what's the thing that never leaves? It's our living God, Jesus Christ himself. His spirit, that still small voice, that never alone, constant companion, second comforter, the Holy Ghost, the Holy Spirit, 1/3 of the Trinity, our God himself. You're not alone when you might be. That's kind of weird, right? Paradoxical. That's why we call it that. The paradoxical gospel of Jesus Christ. You're not alone. I think so many people just need to hear that. But I think people need to be that. It's good. People go on what they call retreats or like a, vacation of solitude. They go spend some time somewhere by themselves and they come back a new person. It happens. It happens. Or people are in a relationship for a long time. Or maybe they just spent most of their life dating and 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 right? Sounds like some kind of like beat. But you're getting beat with all this runaround. That's how it feels, man. It's like you're getting driven into the ground with all this like quote unquote obligation that's not there. Because people feel like there's this need to be around other people. There's this need to just always date somebody. Well, that's pointless. And you know it once you break up with the last person you were dating, right? If you're going to break up with them, you shouldn't have dated them. Not like you got to get after yourself for making a mistake, but just, right? Where are they now? There's that phrase, and this has to be heard the way that I'm saying it, whether it's absolutely terrible or extremely amazing. Hear how I'm saying it, not how you're thinking I'm saying it. But I've heard before people say they don't want to be going on dates to pay for something for somebody else's wife, right? Men are saying this. Good. You can do kind things for people, just, out of your own authenticity, just do something for somebody, but don't do it out of it being a quote unquote date if it's going to be somebody else's wife. Just do it out of, hey, you're a really kind woman, I'm going to do this for you, right? But people are dating so often because they're lonely when they're alone. But then if you're going to just break up and you kind of can tell anyway, right, before it happens, then just don't do it. What you need to do, don't let Evan Strong, me, is who that is, tell you like what you need to do out of my sayings, right? But this will help everybody. Myself, him, her, the dogs. It's great to be very content being alone. It's great to have a husband for the women out there, a wife for the men. It's great to have an owner for the dogs at the shelter. It's great to have a dog for the human being who just adopted one. But also, at the end of the day, you're just what you are. And at the beginning of the day, you were as well. Right? So, I mean it, dude. Listen to the clicking in my hand, bro, because talk about adjustments within my own physical body. Talk about a beard. I actually have a beard. I had a beard for, it's been 4 or 5 years of my life that I've had a beard. But past little while, I haven't really had a trimmed up beard like this. So, got a beard. I don't know, breaking some of the seriousness within this to let you know, like, things don't got to be just what you think they are. Stuff doesn't have to be so somber because it seems like it should. It's okay to be alone. That needs to be heard. It needs to be heard by me. Yeah. Because what I was saying is when I get a dog, right? It's not like this whole, and I'm not saying this is wrong because that's really what service animals are for, is to have a companion with you when other human beings can't, right? But in my personal case, just for context of where I'm coming from within my discussion, I don't need a dog to not feel lonely. Now, there's many things that a dog will do for me, beneficial wise, right? But I don't need it out of a lonely void being filled. But it's something where we can both help each other, right? We need to be content being alone and knowing that we don't have to feel lonely. I feel like there's a lot of examples in Scripture, and I am not this instant really knowing which ones to say, if any, or if it's needed within this, but of just people who were alone, people who they didn't have anybody that was around them or anybody who agreed with what they were saying or doing, but they didn't need to because they knew that God knew. Actually within Joseph Smith's story, I don't even know so much about this, but it's coming to me right now, and so I'm going to say what I say about it. There's a phrase by Joseph Smith, which is the man who translated the Book of Mormon, which is the book that we know as being another testament of Jesus Christ in addition to the Bible within the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And the true church, don't believe me, but it is. That's the place you're going to get the best of all. Yes. Yes. And a third yes. Joseph Smith, there's a quote by him, and one time he said, I don't know exactly how it was phrased, but he said, I knew it, and I knew that God knew it. And that's really all he needed to know. And a lot of times people get very persecuted for things that they're doing or what they are, who they are. And those are the two things we need to really count on, is that we know and that God does. Because a lot of times the reason people feel lonely isn't like a physical, actual alone type of thing going on, but it's often people aren't agreeing with them. So here we are in the Image Clothing Company podcast, episode 82, titled Alone Not Lonely. And I'm Evan Strong, the founder of In the Image Clothing Company, very often saying, don't believe me. Because if I was trying to do something here and hoping that people would believe what I'm saying, then if they didn't, I could feel very lonely. Even if I had thousands of friends. Even if I had family who loved me and I knew they loved me. If I was trying to get them to believe something I was saying, and they just weren't because they're not obligated to, no human is obligated to believe another human being ever, then if they didn't, I might feel a little bit lonely. Thinking, you guys aren't agreeing with me. Oh, good. Don't. Please don't. I mean it. Please leave me alone. I mean it. I mean it, dude. I mean it. And I mean it. I want to hit that hard for a second. Please leave me alone. When you see me in public or whatever, if, right? I'm just saying, if, please, respect me, leave me alone. Because I say the same thing to my siblings and my mom, or, really. I got a really good friend, but I just don't want to respond to their text sometimes. Leave me alone, right? I don't have something against you necessarily because of the reason I'm saying what I'm saying in the moment, but I like to be left alone, right? So, but yeah, no, really, I mean, if we're trying to convince people of stuff and they're not believing it, then even if they're like with us all the time, like it's your wife, she's always there. You go to the bed together, you wake up together, you eat together, you do all the things because you're a companion, right? We talk about being equally yoked, ideally. Members of the body of Jesus Christ, right? Christians, disciples of Jesus Christ. We talk about being equally yoked. Where, like a yoke on an animal is something that you place onto them to connect something to for them to pull it, right? So oxen, the animal, it's commonly spoken about in the ways that it is within the gospel of Jesus Christ. It's in scripture. They would pull something like a cart, right? Or like an ass, a mule, a donkey, whatever words you want to use for a workhorse or a horse, yeah, right? Common animals like that are used to pull things, and they have this thing on them that you place onto them called a yoke. And ideally, we are equally yoked to our God when it comes to us and our significant other, right? We have eternal marriage. We marry, and we're eternal beings. So the other person that we're going to just join to, we now become one. And ideally, we're equals in that relationship, equally yoked, right? So Jesus Christ can be this cart that the animals are pulling. And one of the animals is me. The other animal is my significant other. And if we're pulling at equal distances and equal strengths, equal timings, then we can pull that cart side by side and it can work well, right? Equally yoked. Yeah, I don't know where I was going with that. Maybe that's just all that needed to be said about that. But that does need to be said, meaning that's just how we're going to have the best fulfillment in our relationships. Yeah. Wow. Okay. Good. Yeah. I mean, I don't know exactly even how I came into saying that, but that's a great thing to say. I've got hair on my pants from this poodle that I was just having the best time with today. I was so content with that guy. It was amazing. I'm so grateful, man. It's unreal. Yeah. It is amazing, dude. But But that's the thing, is when you're with an animal, like a dog, if your dog doesn't... This episode's unreal, dude. I can't explain to you the contentment that I have. And it's not like super flowy, And I think that's why it's so great, is because it's just so real. I'm just sitting here and what comes out, comes out. And I think a big part of it is what I did with that dog today. 4 hours sitting on the grass with this beautiful poodle. I could have stayed there as long as I could have, right? I mean, and so it kind of put me in a place where, looking at that dog and seeing how content he is, just having someone like next to him, right? Because a lot of times people aren't, oh my heavens. This is unreal. This is so unreal. I think that's the beautiful thing. Dogs, we talk about how loving dogs are because a dog basically loves everybody. Sometimes dogs have had certain experiences, and so certain people, they don't want to be around as much or whatever, but dogs are pretty loving toward pretty much everybody, pretty well equally, right? And, dogs that are that way, it's common. And some people, that they're around other people, and if the human beings they're around aren't agreeing with them, they feel alone. They feel lonely. It's like, oh my gosh, right? So that's what the thing with dogs is. A lot of times people feel like dogs are just agreeing with everything they do. The dog just wants to look at you in the eyes and just follow you around and wag his tail, We don't want to be like that as people, though, to other people, because we're just not dogs. Dogs have their roles they play, and we have ours, and we don't do that to each other and have healthy relationships. So when I'm talking about being equally yoked, right, a lot of people feel lonely in relationships when the other person isn't just always agreeing with them, right? That's the thing with me is, like I'm saying, I'm saying, please don't agree with me. Please don't believe me for the sake of me. When I'm talking about truths that are apart from me and eternal and unchanging, we can talk about that and agree on something that is apart from all of us as human beings, right? But when people start to feel lonely, the moments that they do is when they get so used to just having to have people answer the questions that they're asking the ways that they're wanting. Having people approach them the way that they're expecting. And things like that. They can be around people but feel absolutely alone. So lonely. And so the whole thing with this title, being alone but not lonely. Alone, not lonely. Alone, not lonely. Right? I mean, I can keep saying that because you can be alone and not be lonely. But you can also be around people and feel entirely alone. So, where's your heart posture? As I was saying earlier, if our hearts are focused on having our highest priority of things that we can be connected with or put any importance on, just our God himself, Jesus Christ, then you never have to feel lonely because you are never without him on his end of things. On our ends, if we're doing things that we're not supposed to and going places that are worldly and devilish, yikes, right? Then, yeah, we're going to take ourselves in those instances away from his perfect peace that he offers us. But you can be in a crowded room and a sea of people and feel like nobody sees you and be completely content. And that's the truth. You don't need all the eyes on you from everybody else around you. Because a lot of times what that does is make people more lonely. Some of the loneliest feeling, again, it's a feeling, the word lonely. And some people in this world, keyword world, rather than on this earth, right? Man-made world versus the natural planet, the earth. People in the world who often feel the most lonely are people who have the most eyes on them. People we label as celebrities. And then you've got the mountain men out there in the woods, right? They couldn't ask for more out of like an authentic wanting. They just don't. They have what they need. They're out there in the woods. They got a hatchet and, an axe. Nature, our God, because there's less distractions. A lot of times we think the more that we get, the less lonely we'll feel, but it's the opposite. It doesn't have to always be, though, right? Because in the Image Clothing Company, it'll get huge, and I mean it. I just say it like that so it's not like I'm trying to be all boastful about it, because it's on the opposite end. It doesn't matter. If we got 7 billion plus people that know our company, or if the amount that currently do are all that ever did, it's about where's your intention, because I don't have to feel more or less lonely on either end. And I could be like literally entirely alone on either end. Have this be the biggest company on the earth and nobody really knows who Evan Strong is. Or just at this current moment, today's date, I could just be sitting in this room alone, right? Either way, I could be just as alone. But either way, I don't have to feel lonely at all. I don't. You don't. He doesn't. She doesn't. The cute dogs that we get the opportunity to house and home and parent, if you will, they don't have to feel lonely either. Truly. Oh, you heard that. Guaranteed. That was my jaw. Talk about it, dude. In the Image Clothing Company. Allowing the body to work, so much adjustment. I've referenced my jaw's stiffness, pain, discomfort, popping, immense. Let me couple with the word pain. Holy cow, it's been unreal past little while. Anyway, it just popped. So, all right, dude. Good stuff. Back to centered, right? I'm not doing anything to change it, but as my body's getting unrestricted more and more, scar tissue being released in other parts of it that aren't even the jaw is aligning because it stabilizes the entire body, right? Again, I kind of like when I say right like that because I'm not asking for agreeance. You could think that I'm saying crazy stuff, but it's just I meant right as in like that's how it is. Right as in if you've heard us, we've talked about it, and if you know kind of thing, right? See, there's the right again. That's so cool, dude. But that's a big thing, getting people to agree with you or not. Holy cow, sometimes you have conversations with people and you're not. All you're doing is waiting for them to get like a momentary high if you agree with something they just said. Otherwise it's like, then move on to somebody else who will. I mean, man, just people pleasers, man. I mean, people pleasing in the sense of it being like a behavioral thing that you've done for a coping mechanism. All right, cool. I've been there times and places. I get that. Sometimes we do that just to feel safe because we don't really know what else to do in moments. But people who are just like yes men, or yes women, somebody who's just around you, kind of like a little dog that's always just there to say yes to everything. Golly. And not that it's wrong for dogs to do that in the ways, again, dogs are different than human beings. We play different roles. A lot of times, it's actually the best to have a dog be very, very, very obedient and listen to you and disciplined, because that's actually going to make the dog have, in the cases that it does, and it's most all cases, the dog will then have a more fulfilled life because like this, human beings are placed here to govern animals, right? Read the first book of the Bible, Genesis. But human beings are placed here governed by our God. And so, right, I mean, we are the ones that are in charge of our animals. Our God is in charge of us. So when I was saying people treat other people like yes men or like a little dog who's always trying to please its owner, well, human beings treat God like that. Dogs treat human beings like that. And that's healthy because that's how our living God, the creator of all things, the beginning and the end, Alpha and Omega, Jesus the Christ, designed it to be. But when a human being is playing a role that's not what a human being should do and just trying to please another one all the time and trying to say yes to it all the time, or trying to just get every other human being to say yes to them or agree with them all the time, then when that doesn't happen, all of a sudden you feel like you're so alone, so lonely. Oh my gosh, all the people around me have different views and opinions to me. And people are like all scared about it. Well, all right. On the other side of fear is where freedom comes. We're commanded more than anything to not fear. And that doesn't mean that you're supposed to just be able to never, right? Really? Because we're also commanded to never sin, but the natural man is what we are, and we are sinful by nature. It's those things I like to be pretty clear about the times that I'm clear about them, right? Because, because you tell someone they shouldn't fear, and they're like, oh, well, now I'm scared because I'm doing the wrong thing because I was already afraid. And you're telling me that I shouldn't. Right? No, that's not really quite how it is. But, I think the big thing is when people don't feel like they can be different than others, they feel so lonely, But then the more you want to fit in and the more you do what you need to be able to fit in and be like all the other people that seem to be doing the things that you're not yet until you start, because now I'm like you. Well, now you're not like you. So now you feel lonely, but you're just like everybody else. But everybody else doesn't know how to be themselves. That's why they feel lonely, right? So that's what I'm saying about being alone in a state of solitude, being within your prayer closet, following the example of our living God, Jesus Christ, who would go up onto the mountaintop to pray to the Father. In those moments when we are physically alone, no other human beings around us, that's when we become less lonely. They're separate things. Loneliness is a feeling, and it doesn't have to even be there. Again, take it with a grain of salt. Don't get after yourself thinking now you're doing something wrong, right? But see it for as it is. And the biggest context that needs to be applied there is that our God is ever present. And you don't have to believe me, but if you draw near to him, he'll draw near to you. You just have to be open to receiving. Knock and the door shall be opened unto you. He stands at the door and knocks, and we need to open it and let him in, and he'll dine with us. All these phrases and all these scriptures and all these ways of using metaphors and stories within scripture to explain how this all works, that's how it works. It really is kind of like, hey, step away from the hustle and bustle, and you'll become less lonely. It's kind of hard sometimes, though, in physical locations. You live in a city, and sometimes it's hard to have alone time. But now everybody seems to have conversations all over the place, and you think that maybe if you don't have something that's really interesting to say, then you're somebody who's all alone because everybody else knows how to do it so well, and no. They don't. All those people know how to do the fake stuff, and you're probably a real person stuck in a fake society. So step outside a little bit and go get some solitude, some alone time. That's what I was saying today with that dog. Oh my gosh. I mean, I'm somebody who, like I'm saying, I know that I keep saying the word saying, but let me speak some sayings to you, right? I spend a lot of time alone, and I do, but being with a dog is a whole different kind of thing, dude. It's like, it helps you realize that you are alone. Oh, gosh. That's so weird. That's what it did for me today. I've spent a decent amount of time with dogs in my life to a degree, but today with him on the grass, it helped me realize how alone I really am. And that was so liberating. I felt so much less lonely. But also, we can relate to dogs where we do put them back in a kennel, or we leave them home alone for, even if it's just a short amount of time. And I think that's the whole thing, is no matter what, we're never going to like rid the potential to feel lonely. But it's also something we don't need to do. We're never going to stop sinning and be perfect in this life. But it's also something that ideally we don't do. Sins, right? It's the paradoxical gospel of Jesus Christ. And the whole thing is, it gives you so much perspective. Seeing a dog. Because the dude was in there all alone. And maybe you felt like you were the only person in the world who felt like they were the only person in the world. Do you see that? But how many dogs out there in households where they're alone for X amount of time in a day? And maybe each one of them thinks that they're on an island and there's no other thing or person that gets to experience this torment of being alone, and how lonely they perceive their situation. Because that's the thing, you're in that crowded room with all the people around you, right? That we were kind of talking about earlier. The sea of people, but you feel like nobody knows you exist. How does that make any sense? Well, many people within that room feel that way. And so isn't that weird? Each dog within a household that's alone for however many hours a day, minutes a day even, maybe feels like he's the only dog that will ever, or she is the only dog that will ever experience that level of loneliness, abandonment. Ooh. But then on the same block, within the same little area, there's many other dogs in other houses that are feeling a very similar thing. Within the same room where you're standing there and you're looking around at all these people and feeling like nobody notices you, there's many other people feeling the exact same thing. But are you any less alone there than you are maybe at home, in a room by yourself, or in a vehicle driving somewhere and nobody else in the car, on a walk, nobody right next to you? Because you're not. It's like I'm saying, I mean, our God is just ever present. And you don't have to feel lonely. Because look at this for a second, if you would. In a moment like that, in a crowded room, so many people, you're not in a conversation. And so you're like, all right, this kind of feels a little bit lonely. It's a group of people talking over there. There's two people talking over there. These guys are playing a game. Those guys are having a laugh. Huh, all right. Well, I'd rather not feel so lonely, you might be saying. So you go sit there and try to talk to somebody else. And now within that conversation, you feel worse. You feel like you were actually more loved when there was nobody else with their attention on you. See what I'm talking about? Our God, one of his many names is love. The pure light and love of Jesus Christ. You know? His Spirit's ever present, but some worldly things, and dare I say, without sounding high and mighty over others, worldly people. Whew, right? Golly, he's condemning because he's such a self-righteous saint. I'm worldly in the ways that I am, but in the moments that I'm not, I don't want to be around somebody who is. Because I feel more lonely doing that than being physically alone. Right? I'm not asking for agreeance, but if you agree with the truth I'm saying, not with Evan Strong's words. See what I'm saying? Yeah, man. Sometimes it's those really talkative people we feel like we want to be around to feel less lonely, and then you can't get a word in. Now you feel more silenced, as well, right? Maybe even more lonely. Is that crazy or what? You know it. If you know, I mean, you've experienced this probably. We're all human beings. We're all on the same earth. Even the black person. I just want to see how many times I can say stuff like that before, I don't know, people start to like think I'm a racist. You know what I mean? I mean, there's all sorts of reasons people feel lonely, right? Because they're different. But guess what? Who's not? If that person's not you and you're not them, you guys must be different. Is that's true, right? Yeah? Everybody's agreeing now? Now we're all in agreement over truth because it's apart from all of us. You see what I'm saying? So when you start to feel like you're too different and so you've got to feel all lonely about it because everybody else seems to fit in, well, they're only fitting in with something they're trying to fit in with. It's not them that's fitting in. It's the persona they're creating that's not them. And so now the real them is all lonely because it got abandoned for something that's not quite as good. But the world thinks so. Right? Holy cow. Talk about In the Image Clothing Company podcast, episode 82. Alone, not lonely. Because there's a lot of times we have set out places that we go to feel the utmost peace in a quiet, solitude, empty area. I mean, if you are somebody who enjoys the mountains and you go up there and you feel more connected than just about anywhere else on the earth, but there's no humans around, you're more alone there than you were in the city. But all your loneliness has just vanished. See what I'm saying? I mean, I'm going to stick on race for a minute because I like it. I love to talk about race because it's not even a real thing. But you're a black dude or a black chick. I mean, how real can I get? I almost want to sound a little offensive to see if I can stir up some feathers to get people really thinking. But you're a black person in America, the United States of America, predominantly Caucasian, white-skinned human beings. You can feel all alone. But then what if you go somewhere that's like got mostly black people? You're the same person, right? You go over to somewhere in Africa, and there's a lot of white people in parts of Africa, right? A lot of people from other parts of the earth as well that have gone there. We're on the same earth, dude. Calm it down a little bit, would you? With the segregation that you're claiming is equality. Holy cow. But then, yeah, you actually go over to Africa, and now, like, your skin is similar color to just about everybody that you're around, but you're no different. Do you actually feel less lonely or what, right? I mean, maybe. What I'm saying is, like, you feel alone because you're the oddball, but you don't have to feel lonely because you're you. You know? I mean, the reason people feel lonely in crowds of people is because they think like they think they should be like everybody else that's in the room. But you're you. So be that thing, and then other people can be their thing. And, man, dude. I think the big thing to see with that whole, like, you got different color skin in a certain area, and you can either feel lonely or not, and it's really a choice. I mean, I get people are saying words all left and right and stuff, and yeah, if people are being mean, people are being mean, I mean, treat others how you want to be treated. But the big thing is, it's kind of like that whole thing about the celebrities, I mean, the more eyes that are on you, sometimes the lonelier you feel. And so if you feel like the oddball out, you can be alone because you're different than the rest of them in whatever area or group or whatever it is, right? But you don't have to feel lonely because I think a lot of times people envy people, man. People people don't know how to take other people. And they don't know how people have the confidence they do just being what they are. And so they'll look at them and, maybe give an eye, just like not looking single to the glory of God. You know what I'm saying? But it's not because they're trying to be mean, but it's just because they don't understand how you are what you are. Like me sitting alone at a table, at the Institute tonight, eating the nachos. A lot of people probably looking over at me like, how's this kid doing that, And I'm just sitting there more content than the rest of them that are around people talking about stuff they don't care to talk about. So, I mean, it's actually, our diversities. Shout out to In the Image Clothing Company podcast episode titled Diversity. It's one of the first few. And our differences, those kind of things that actually make us feel less lonely when we realize that we're alone in being unique. And it's pretty unique to be content not in a relationship when you don't need to be. At least in modern United States of America, a lot of people are just in relationships all the time because other people are, trying to be like everybody else, and you feel alone now, right? So you can be alone though, and you don't gotta feel like it's a problem. Golly, talk about contentment, dude. I mean, oh man, alone and not lonely, dude. Yeah. I talk, within In the Image Clothing Company podcast about how I like to be left out of things. I like to intentionally leave myself out of things because if you're worried about missing out on something, then when you do miss out on it for whatever reason, you may feel lonely. But it's kind of a conditioning thing that you can do for yourself in a good way, Miss out on it, intentional, and now you're alone. But you chose to. That's a good choice. See what I'm saying? Man. It's good to be a different person too, man. It's good to be like different. Somebody's different than everybody else that's like around you in your physical location. Because you're alone in that area as far as what you are is different than everybody else that's around you. And because of that, you've got something to you, that other people can see. Not that they need to try to be like you or whatever, because you're you and they're them. But I think there is a level of like being alone in what you are. Because a lot of times that is what happens. And a lot of times it is race type stuff, because there are places where it's just not so common to have people from a certain part of the earth because we migrate to other parts of the earth, right? I mean, that's just how that works. That's why that is what it is. And if you are somebody who's like black skinned in an area with predominantly white people, really, you are alone in the sense that maybe you're the only person in this whole room who's got black skin. The other person's got white skin, all the other people in there. But you're not needing to feel lonely, like you're missing out on like relating to something else. You know what I mean? Because what ends up happening is when there are things that we could label as, I'm going to word it like this, our alones, right? Like this person's alone in liking this thing and everybody else likes that thing. This person's alone in having this hobby and everybody else seems to be doing some other things. There's a level of like, well, it's that uniqueness, that's not so much there, just meaning we're all so similar, but the little bit of uniqueness that there is to us as human beings and as individuals, that's where it shines through. Is in moments like that where we have what I worded as our alones, right? The things that we could label as what makes us alone, but kind of a synonym is what sets us apart, right? I like to look at this kind of stuff. I'm going to stick on race for a bit. I really am. I like it. I really like it because I think within the gospel of Jesus Christ, it's so much more understood that people are people. But then within the world, you got all the division that you've got about whatever, because we're all united under Christ. And so I think within the church, just meaning the body of Jesus Christ, anybody who is a disciple of Jesus Christ, right? That's what we mean by the church in the ways that I'm saying it there. It's so common for people to just be so much more accepting than anywhere else on the earth. And it's not because the people are so much better than the other ones, but it's because we know the perfect example to follow, our God, the one who created all of us. And so I think a big thing that happens is outside of the body of Jesus Christ, disciples of his, right? Outside of that, I think it's pretty common for people to just be so used to segregation, and not just from people to people, but from likes to likes, from hobbies to hobbies, right? Those kind of things. And so I think the way that we talk about things like this that can be such a touchy subject in the quote unquote world, you know, when it comes to being within the church, it's just like, well, I don't know, dude. I mean, it's just a person, like, because we know what people really are. And you're so much less lonely when you realize that everybody else is just what you are, a son or daughter of our living God, Jesus Christ. Because that's really what makes people feel so lonely, is they don't know their identity. You can attach your identity to the color of your skin, but then all of a sudden you thought you were white and you spent a week in Mexico on the beach. Now what, you Hispanic? Now are you brown? Until maybe 3 weeks later, your skin peels off, that got all tanned, right? See what I mean? It's stuff like that when we see things as it is. It's like, oh, there it is, under all the beliefs and opinions and stuff, the truth remains, right? And so with saying that, that's what I'm saying. I don't know. I just think we don't know our identities if we don't know our identities. If we don't know where we actually came from, if we don't know who God, the one and only, really is, then you can feel so lonely because you don't know what to attach yourself to. And everybody else seems like they figured it out, right? But it's all something different. So what? Nah, attach yourself to less, right? And there you are. Not lonely, but alone. As far as you are the thing that you are, and you're not those other ones, right? There you go. Now you're alone, but you're not lonely because you know who you are. And you don't know who you are. I wrote a song like that. Let me see. You don't know who you are. Don't know where you're going. Shoot. I was writing a song like that about a year ago about this exact thing. People who don't know their true identity, who their real father is, who their God is. You probably feel pretty lonely, right? All right, cool. Hey, guess what? You don't have to. You can be alone and know that your God is ever present. Our God. The black people, the white people, the brown people, the people who were out there splatter painting the wall for some festival, and now they're like all sorts of rainbowed out for like an hour and a half till they hit the shower. You're not having to feel alone when you are, because you're not. And you don't need to feel lonely when you're alone, in the sense of having no other human beings around, right? Let's see some things as they are. Let's change the world by just, using our God's words, again, just relaying truth, I'm not reinventing the wheel, but I'm showing how well it rolls. I said something similar to that in one of these past episodes, quite a few back from this point, and I that was awesome. Came to me, and I was like, yeah, that's what we're doing here. That's really cool. So anyway, you don't know who you are. Darn, I mean, because that's the thing is, if you don't know who you are, truly, not who you think that you can decide you are, because you can't. Ooh, gosh. Am I saying harsh words or am I liberating you? It's the latter, actually. And not the one that you have to try to climb to get to heaven, but the one that is secondary, as in the second comforter, the Spirit of our living God, the Holy Spirit. The one that dwells within all things because he created them. And so you're never actually alone. You don't have to feel lonely. And I think we're going to wrap it up right there because that's some great context, and I'm grateful to be able to know it. I'm grateful for that experience today, sitting there for 4 hours on the front lawn of this animal shelter with a beautiful standard poodle. And him and I were just sitting there, bro. And I was telling him, I'm like, bro, I could do this every day until I worded it like this. How cool is this? I was telling that dog that I would be entirely willing to spend the rest of his life with him. A lot of times we word things like the rest of our lives. But in most cases, us human beings outlive our dogs. In this, we're talking about dogs here. Pets in general, but right. So I would be spending the rest of his life with him. And I think that's like more of a personable way to phrase that. In this case, it's just a literal, it's just how it would be. Unless I do die before the dog does. But let's say the dog lives somewhere around like 14 years, right? Poodles, somewhere around there a lot of times. Worded that way, it's kind of like, it kind of helps you really see what's going on, right? Because sometimes people get animals so that they can feel less lonely, but really you're the one that's there for that animal's entire life in most cases. So you're the one that's helping them. And that's the same with people as well. A lot of times when you feel so lonely, a lot of people that are like right around you might, quote unquote, because there's no comparison, but maybe they feel lonelier, right? So I'm going to wrap it up. We are a clothing company, after all. We have I just don't want to wrap it up without giving the answer, as it always is. Apart from me, before I ever existed, after I ever die. However you can word that, but Jesus Christ, right? I've said it and I've said it and I've said it throughout this, but the Spirit of our God, you don't have to feel lonely. And yeah, I know that sometimes we do, but sometimes we feel all sorts of things. Maybe we didn't want to, but we're not in charge, and it's not our decisions to make. We don't just get to wish our emotions away, but we have a God who's there to not only suffer them with us and go through the things that we're going through in the instant that we're experiencing them, when we feel maybe so lonely like nobody else could ever know what we're feeling, but he already did it when he suffered and died for us. All our pains, afflictions, and sins, because it's not just sins. It's not just that all our mistakes have been wiped clean, but he took all of our hurt and felt it as well. He went in our place. He went before us as a perfect example. And so when we think we're alone and how much pain we're experiencing, and whether we are or not, if we're feeling lonely about it because other people don't seem to be as understanding as we want them to be on our end of things, right? Our wants, people might never. It's like the whole thing about don't try to get people to agree with you all the time, because what if they don't at one point? You get used to it with a certain person you have around you that you've almost like trained. Yikes. But then you get somebody else around you who's just not going to go for that, right? Our God knows it all. You don't have to be lonely because He will never leave you, even when you're physically alone. So, we will have clothing available when we do, made out of 100% natural materials, because the human body is natural. And materials themselves, if they're synthetic and unnatural, they can very, very, very greatly alter the body in so many more ways than it may seem if you don't quite know all of what it does. Meaning, if you don't know quite a bit of what it does. I'm not claiming to know all of what it does. But staying centered, fitting correct, allowing the body to work. Make sure that if you do ever purchase In The Image Clothing Company clothing, you just do all that you can to get it in the size that is actually yours, fitting in the locations where clothing has to, just because the human body only works how it does. Oversized clothing in itself is an imbalance and so damaging to our body and its only workings. So, like I said, it's the maybe 18th, maybe 19th of March 2025. I'm honestly not exactly sure, but it's a Wednesday. My name is Evan Strong, the founder of In The Image Clothing Company. There we go. Thank you.